It's like waiting for a holiday or something, but it's finally draft week, which makes me very excited to talk to John Easthope of the Red Mile Rundown podcast.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Locked On Flames. I am Ryan G. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Coming up, we'll go around the Pacific Division, but as we get a treat to do on Tuesdays, we spend the first segments with John Easthope of the Red Mile Rundown podcast. New episode out now at the Red Mile Rundown podcast. John, you sent me one message. It's finally draft week when you sent me that on Sunday. Here we are, a couple days later, approaching the weekend when you will actually make selections on the future of franchises. How excited are you that it is, in fact, finally draft week?
Very excited because it's one of the best weeks of the year. A little relieved as well because it's hard to come up with content when your team's been out of the playoffs and out of the playoff race for a couple months already. So I sent my co-host, the same, everyone who I do content with got the same message this week. It was finally draft week. I don't care what other topic we have to talk about. I don't care if we come up with anything else to talk about. It's finally draft week. It's finally time to stop all this chatter and speculation and who's going where, who's doing what, and let's make some draft picks and let's do some trades.
I know there could be some trades. In fact, we'll ask about how one trade that happened over the weekend might impact Calgary's maneuverability in the NHL draft coming up on this edition of Locked On Flames. Let's go through the list, right? You can tell me if you agree, disagree with the mock drafts. We're just going to happen to use one arbitrarily from Daily Faceoff that came out on Monday morning. Toronto goes Gavin McKenna. Any disagreement?
I think they're stupid to go anywhere else other than Gavin McKenna.
It feels like that. And then the pivot point might be still number 2. San Jose in this latest mock draft goes Chase Reed. How do you think about that?
Yeah, don't hate it. It does feel a need for you. This is definitely a time where San Jose is trying to make that transition to a playoff team. So it makes sense to try to go after something that's more of a positional need than an actual, best available player, which would probably be Stenberg at that point. So I don't mind that for them. Chase Reed, very good defenseman, kind of what they need there in San Jose.
Okay, so that's kind of been the pivot point, which means Ivar Stenberg's available for the Canucks. Vancouver selects him at number 3. And then you got Carson Karls and Caleb Malhotra at 4 and 5, respectively. So if you look at those 3 picks in a row, it trickles down to Calgary having some options. But do you think the Rangers go Malhotra if Malhotra is there after those other 2 selections at 3 and 4?
It's interesting because Vancouver's also a very pivotal point in that draft. A lot of speculation about Malhotra to them as well. If that makes Stenberg to whoever you flip that around, you'd be dumb to skip over Malhotra if you are the Rangers, if he is available there. Depends what they feel about the defenseman. If they do think that Keaton Verhoeff is their guy or is a guy that could be a difference maker on their back end, could they go that direction? Don't hate that, though. Malhotra in New York makes a lot of sense if Vancouver does the right thing, which is the right thing is to take Stenberg for them. If they do the right thing, then Malhotra makes sense in New York, and Carson Karls in Chicago just kind of fits kind of what they're doing there. So,
okay, so that means that Calgary has some options, right? Albert Smeets is available if you want to go that direction. They also have Tynan Lawrence that you've talked about earlier on in our draft coverage, but in this mock draft from the Daily Faceoff, which happens to match the one that we did for Locked On Network. Granted, I was doing a little fan service with the YouTube comments because Viggo Björck was there. That is the selection of the SHL to the Calgary Flames at number 6. So let's say that happens. How are you feeling from a Calgary Flames perspective?
Yeah, I'm good with it. High skilled center. That's what you want. Hopefully he projects as a center. That's the big question for me with Bjork. Does he project as a center? And Logan Stankoven, who just won a Stanley Cup, kind of gives you reason to pause. Hey, these smaller guys can be centers in the right spot, in the right role. I do still wonder if the Flames do go defense there. They do have Keaton Verhoeff on the board. You got to know the little ins and outs there if you haven't heard about Keaton Verhoeff. Jerome McGinley was his billet when he was younger and playing in juniors and in minor league pros. They know Verhoeff because Cole Reschny plays at the same school, so they've seen a lot of him there. So I think either Bjork or Verhoeff makes sense at number 6, and if it's Bjork, hey, that's a great player, great skill. Bet on skill.
We're talking to John Easthope of the Red Mile Rundown podcast. New episode out now, which you should get at the Red Mile Rundown podcast on YouTube.
Please.
And as well as wherever any of your podcasts are sold. For what it's worth, Keaton Verhoeff goes to number 9, which we'll talk about that pick coming up later on in the show. So I was going to throw 2 scenarios at you, John. Then it's draft week. We've been talking about them, but they're kind of more solidified. In this mock draft, Calgary goes with a forward at the number 6 spot. So I'm going to ask you, what do they do at 30 in that scenario? And then I want you to flip that as well. If they go defense at number 6, what do they do at 30? Walk us through a couple of those options.
Well, the simple answer for both is best available player on your board, who's ever there. For me, though, if you're going...
How about caveating the Craig Conroy answer? My fault. Yes, best player available always. But continue.
It would be smart to go one of each, right? If you go forward, if it's Björck at number 6, then it would make sense to target a defenseman. Pick your guy, whether that's Ben McBeth of the Hitman in the later round, or whoever else you might target as a defenseman in that. It would be smart to do one of each type of thing. But best available player obviously would be the correct answer, and vice versa. If they go Keaton Verhoeff at 6, there's a plethora of centers you can have in that later round. You talk about Jack Hextall as a guy I bring up a lot as a guy who could target in that mid-20s area. The Ruck brothers is another one that you could have in that area as well, whoever your fancy might be. Or let's get really creative and go get 2 top 10 picks and pick one of each of the top guys there. So it would be smart to go 1 forward, 1 defense, but give you the Craig Conroy answer, and probably what he's going to do is say best available player on the board, step up and select him, because that's kind of why you build those lists for. It doesn't make any sense to make a big list with all these prospects and kind of deviate the last second just because, hey, we need a defenseman here. So if they end up going, say they end up going Björck and Jack Hextall, you're not, don't be mad about it, but I think it still would be smart to try to go one of each.
All right, I know it's still a couple of days away, but at this point, who do you think at number 6 Calgary is actually going to draft from a Craig Conroy perspective?
I've been on this train for 2 weeks now. It's Keaton Verhoeff. That's my guy. I think with all of the connections the Flames have to him, the way Craig Conroy was in an interview on a podcast on Friday, he was chatting, his body language really perked up when talking about Keaton Verhoeff. If he's there at 6, and they were doing it the old-fashioned way, I think we see Craig Conroy sprinting to the podium to select a Keaton Verhoeff. So I think that's the guy that they're after, and I think that's where I'm landing to, is Keaton Verhoeff.
It's such a shame we've lost the sprinting to the podium analogy in this day and age.
I know.
True.
I hate it.
Well, North Dakota is Calgary South, so it'll be nice to see another Fighting Hawk join the fray if that is in fact the case. All right, next segment, we're going to get into a couple of other scenarios, including the big news over the weekend with a trade that might impact Calgary's targets for getting back higher into the first round. We'll do that next on this episode of Locked On Flames. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. Look at the Calgary Flames situation. They signed Craig Conroy, a former Flames player, to the GM role, and all of a sudden things start to turn around for Calgary and everyone's optimistic. In the sea of red, the best organizations aren't trying to look at every option. They're focused on identifying people who truly match what they're looking for. That's exactly what Indeed Sponsored Jobs is designed to help businesses do. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of our show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job status the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. ED is way more common than most guys think, and millions of men deal with it at some point. Hims offers a simple, convenient way to take care of your health by connecting you with licensed healthcare providers online and giving you access to personalized treatment options from the comfort of your own home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process designed to make getting care easier. Taking care of yourself shouldn't feel complicated, and HIMS makes the process private and easy to navigate. It's healthcare built around your schedule and your comfort. Anything that makes healthcare less stressful, more comfortable is super exciting for me, because when something is already uncomfortable to talk about, the last thing that you want is a complicated process. It makes the whole thing even more friction filled. You want to try to make it more streamlined. Having that ability to start the conversation online from home makes taking the first step feel much more manageable. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/lockedonnhl. That's hims.com/lockedonnhl for your free online visit. hims.com/lockedonnhl. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is a generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. Thank you so much for making Locked On Flames your first listen every single day. We invite you to join our Everydayer Club. We made it just for you, where you get members only access to a Discord server where you're talking to every host across the Locked On network. Check it out with a 7-day free trial at lockedonflames.supercast.com. You also get our show ad-free, which is always a bonus. It's always a bonus to have John Easthope on with us on Tuesdays. We get a chance to talk to one half of the hosts of the Red Mile Rundown podcast, which you should get right now on YouTube at the Red Mile Rundown podcast, and of course, wherever your podcasts are found. Brady Tkachuk is joining his brother in Florida, the former Flame, now with Brady out of Ottawa. It looks like a couple Florida's first round picks are gone. They're going to the Ottawa Senators. We were talking in the first segment about who is drafted by Ottawa at number 9. Now that they have that, it actually ended up being Keaton Verhoeff, the guy that you think Calgary is definitely going to pick at number 6. I'm curious, both, what do you think of Brady joining his brother in Florida? And then how does that impact that idea that Calgary could target number 9 in this upcoming draft?
Yeah, it's a big trade. It's a big move. Brady Tkachuk, exercising his powers, much like Matthew did in Calgary, saying, hey, I'm not signing a long-term contract here, and gets the move that he wanted. We're seeing that a little bit more frequently in the National Hockey League now, where players are deciding where they want to play and kind of pigeonholing teams into forcing them to where they want to go. We'll see how that shakes up. That's a bigger conversation. But for Brady Tkachuk personally, it's a great move for him, playing with his brother. I think brothers love playing together when it comes to sports like this, high competitive sports. I think the taste of the Olympic gold kind of put a fire under Brady. I kind of want to win something else, sooner than later. Not that Ottawa wasn't on a good path for that, but he goes to a super team now in Florida. He gets to play with his brother, so it's a good move for him. And what I think Ottawa did was get a really good package for a player who a lot of people aren't saying is a mega stud like his brother is, but he's a very good hockey player. You're going to get 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder in about 100 years from now, but it's a good package for Ottawa, and it's a good pivot point for them. They can't just draft, in my opinion, with these draft picks. They have good momentum. They finally made the playoffs. They finally got over that hump. Now trying to get to the next step of that, trying to do what the Buffalo Sabres did, what the Montreal Canadiens did, go down deeper runs in the playoffs. And so I think at number 9, if Ottawa picks a player, I don't think it'll be lack of trying to acquire an NHL player instead. That's my look on things. Pivot point, a Robert Thomas, a Vinton Trocheck, someone else they can bring in NHL ready who can play NHL games now, rather than someone that's going to be 2 or 3 years down the road for Ottawa. It makes a lot of sense for them to go down that road. If they're going to go down this just picking players, I think there's a bit of a failure on the Ottawa Senators. They've got to pivot off of this real quick here, and they have an opportunity with having that pick number 9, and a lot of hungry teams looking to move back into that top 10, Flames being one of them, that could offer a lot of picks and prospects and players for that. And I think it's going to take an NHL-ready player, a high-end NHL player like a Robert Thomas from the St. Louis Blues to get that pick from Ottawa. So I think it's a less likely trade destination for the Flames, but it absolutely adds a little bit of intrigue and interest around that pick for the Ottawa Senators and at the draft on Friday. We'll see what Steve Staios does, because it's a big move for them. They got out in front of a situation with Brady Tkachuk, and now they have an opportunity here to pivot real quickly here. That's a Timmy Stützle-led team now up front, and who can they get to pair with him to help the Ottawa Senators push forward here? So that'll be an interesting pick for me to watch, and I don't know if the Flames have a player, if a Blake Coleman or a Zach Whitecloud will intrigue Ottawa enough to get up there into pick number 9, but we'll see how that shapes up on Friday.
Yeah, for a point of clarity, too, they got the 25th pick from the first round. Ottawa did, because earlier Florida had made a deal with Seattle in order to acquire that one. But you kind of answered my next question, which is this idea, does Calgary have somebody that would be enticing? Obviously, that's going to matter who's calling at the certain time from the Craig Conroy perspective. Maybe he can find a way to maneuver. But that said, if you look at the pick at 30 and the idea of moving up, let's say it's even a couple of spots into the 20s somewhere, is there some sort of type that you'd like to see the Flames get late in the first round? Is there a value there, or are you more specifically interested in a certain player? I know you've mentioned Jack Hextall a couple of times, but if they're moving up for somebody, is there a type of structure, a character, if you will, that you would like to see the Flames pick at that selection?
If they're moving up, that means they've targeted somebody there that fits exactly what Ryan Huska and Craig Conroy are trying to do. They're trying to fit. I don't think they have a type. I think what they want is a hardworking hockey player who's going to show up and work hard every day. So if they're moving up, they've targeted a guy that does exactly that. JP Hurlburt's another name from the Kamloops Blazers that they could go into the mid-teens to try to select a guy like that they think is going to come in here and just work his tail off. That's one thing we watch with people. They always down talk the Ryan Huska hockey. Oh, it's so low, it's boring, low event hockey. No, it's hard working, high compete hockey. It's just they don't have the high end skill to go finish at the other end quite yet. So if you can get a player that can come in here and can work his tail off, you see guys like Connor Zary working their tails off, or Joel Farabee, those type of players. I think that's what the Flames will be in the market for. Hey, this guy was number 10 on our board. He's fallen to 15 on the actual board. We really like his work ethic. Let's trade up and go get them. JP Hurlburt or Jack Hextall or a Wyatt Collins, whoever it might be at the spots here. So, and I think that pick 30 is very much in play for that type of move as well.
I have a couple of quick ones for you, John Easthope. First and foremost, Victor Olofsson. Is that somebody you see at all hanging around with Calgary and re-signing?
No.
Yeah. It seems like that was a piece of the puzzle, but somebody that doesn't make sense for Calgary to hold on to.
That was
the other side of it.
Let's make the cap work here, guys. Here's how we make the cap work.
The other side of things is Carolina wins the Stanley Cup, and of course that was bad news for Flames fans in so many ways, because we got pushed down farther in this year's first round. Calgary doesn't get the extra first round pick in a couple of years. When you look at the Carolina structure, and you referenced this a little bit earlier with the Viggo Björck commentary, what specific step do you recommend for the Flames to kind of take lessons learned from Carolina's Cup run? Is there something that you want to see the Flames incorporate in terms of identity or personnel?
The biggest takeaway for me with Carolina was coaching matters, right? Coaching matters. So Rod has that room at the tip of his fingers. They do exactly what he says, when he wants to do it, how he wants to do it. If Ryan Huska can emulate something similar, which I think he does have good command of that room. I think that really does matter when you're building a hockey club. So he doesn't have one person bigger than the team. Rod is the team, and everyone falls in line with that. If you can get 23 guys to buy into that type of system and to work as hard as the Carolina Hurricanes do, you'll be successful. Not everyone can have the Florida model or the Vegas model because of where they are and how they acquire players. It just is a different way of doing it in Calgary or in Carolina or other places. So if you can buy into what the coach is selling you, and you have those type of players that are willing to work hard, I think you have success. Carolina proved that. And then you see the super teams here haven't exactly run the table here. Sometimes the work outdoes the skill, and we saw that in the Stanley Cup Finals.
I appreciate the point, because I think you mentioned earlier, like the knock on Ryan Huska is the hockey is boring, but I believe in Ryan Huska. I think the team believes in Ryan Huska. I think Craig Conroy does too. And the one thing that's really fun about any play style, right, is if the team is winning, then nobody absolutely cares how you're winning, because you're winning the games. And I think Ryan Huska has that potential. So that's an interesting link between those two. If Ryan Huska is owning that locker room, then I think Calgary is in good shape.
Yeah, it's less to do with his style as well. It's like you have to have the right personnel to do it. So you saw Eric Tulsky go out and get Rod Brindamore style players, Stan Coven and Ehlers, and those type of guys who buy into what Rod's preaching. If the Flames can do that with Ryan Huska, you're going to have a better working hockey club. And it might be 3-2 hockey, but it could be some of the best hockey. How good was Carolina to watch in that final? They bought in and they played good hockey. So it's people are going to say it's the boring Ryan Huska style, but look at the roster he was also given to work with. So
I believe in Ryan Huska. I believe in you, John Easthope, as well.
Thank
I
you.
like the Red Mile Rundown podcast. You should get a new episode out now at the Red Mile Rundown podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. It's finally here. It's draft week, John.
Next week we can talk about an actual draft pick. I'm so excited.
I can't wait either. Check out their podcast with Robert Munich as well, and we'll have you on next week. Stick around. We are on the way through the Pacific Division. We're going to hear from other Locked On podcast hosts about their team coming up next on this episode of Locked On Flames. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone work toward the same goal. And that is true in sports, just like it is in business. You look at Calgary, getting Craig Conroy, making him the GM of the Flames. From the front office down to the coaching staff, everything is working in sync right now for Calgary. And that's one thing that really stands out. It's not just one great player or the coach. It's everyone making a coordinated effort across the entire organization that will and has made this rebuild successful. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's ODOO.com/lockedon. We go around the Pacific Division on this episode of Locked On Flames, hear from other Locked On podcast hosts about what they're thinking for their NHL teams. We're also going to get closer to the NHL entry draft. On Wednesday's show, we continue to examine the other possibilities after Craig Conroy's interviews earlier in the week, specifically on the forwards side of the puck. All right, let's start our tour around the Locked On Podcast Network, including a trip to Vancouver, because the Brady Tkachuk deal has kind of changed the context out of who the Canucks should target at number 3.
I know just from, and I try to remove my bias from this, just from the draft tape I've watched, I've actually been a bigger fan of Carson Karels than Chase Reed. And I've said this before on this program, right? Chase Reed might be the more high-end offensive defenseman, but Carson Karels does it all for your team, man. The hitting, the defending, the offense as well. Do you not lean toward? Do you not lean to a guy like that if he's close to Chase Reed? I know Karels and Björck are some of my favorite guys from this draft, right? So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think if you're the Canucks, you got to think long and hard about drafting an American with a 3rd overall pick.
Speaking of the Florida Panthers, who traded for Brady Tkachuk, they also made a deal with the Seattle Kraken. Here's Locked on Kraken.
First, the Kraken have traded for Mackie Samoskevich, sending the 25th overall pick. It's still a first rounder, but is the first rounder they got last year at trade deadline when they traded Yanni Gordon, Oliver Bjorkstrand at the trade deadline. And so they traded that, and then a conditional second round pick. It's one of the second round picks they have. They have both Columbus and Winnipeg's. Whichever those two end up being higher will be the other pick that goes. And in return, they get Mackie Samoskevich, who is a winger from Florida. We'll talk about him. Exact kind of player that they should be targeting. Now, he is a restricted free agent, so the Kraken do have to sign him to a contract, but restricted free agency is generally a nothing. He did do a media availability, and we'll play that at some point.
We're going around the Pacific Division, hearing from other Locked On podcast hosts about their teams, more trade possibilities too. What about for the Los Angeles Kings? And it's a name that may have something to do with the team we just heard from, the Seattle Kraken. Here's Locked On Kings.
Mentioning Vince Dunn, and honestly, not a sexy name, but he's a very good player. A star player, no, but he is a very good top pairing left shot defenseman. He currently plays with Seattle Kraken. Now, he is going into the final year of his contract, making $7.35 million per season, 29 years old. He's got a 16-team no-trade list. He had 11 goals and 44 points last season for a very offensively challenged Seattle team.
What about the Vegas Golden Knights, Western Conference champs? Are they getting into the Larkin sweepstakes?
There's something I like about Dylan Larkin face-off circle, 52.9, 54.5, 55.4. So
that's big.
Yeah, no, you're getting a lot more than just someone who has the ability to score. And Larkin and Marner, that would be an absolute lethal combination for someone that's had 33, 40, 36, and 47 assists in their last 4 seasons, but also 32, 33, 30, and 34 goals.
From Locked On Golden Knights over to Locked On Sharks, because the focus of this next few weeks, upgrading the blue line.
And that should be Mike Greer's number one priority this week and a half, 2 weeks, is to continue to find upgrades onto the blue line. And we saw, right, we already took some steps here with the Michael Kesselring trade that the Sharks completed last week. And seems pretty universally praised by Mike Greer, kind of now that we're exiting out of that a little bit. But, you know, we'll see what the contract continues to look like for Kesselring. And I kind of expect somewhere in that like 2.5, 3 million, somewhere in that type of range, especially for a guy kind of coming off a poor season like he did with the Buffalo Sabres.
Last stop around the Pacific Division for this episode. It's Locked On Oilers, talking Jason Dickinson's runway with the team.
The Oilers are telling you, we think there's going to be at least 3-year window of contention where Jason Dickinson can be the third line center on a Stanley Cup winning team. I think all of us are savvy enough to understand that when we give a 30 or a 31-year-old a 5 or 6 or 7 or God forbid an 8-year deal, we understand that we're mostly paying for the front half of that deal, that the last 2 or 3 years, at that point, we're hoping we have won a Stanley Cup and we're giving that player the golden parachute on the way out. But I don't like the defense for bad contracts always being, well, the cap's going up, so it's not that bad. No. If every contract can be defended by the cap is going up, every contract is bad.
Check out all these shows across the Locked On Podcast Network, and can't wait to have this episode, or this segment rather, on next week's episode, especially post-draft. My big thanks to John Easthope for joining us on this episode of Locked On Flames. My biggest thanks for you tuning in. Of course, if you never miss a show, we made the Everydayer Club just for you. Go to lockedonflames.supercast.com. Get our show ad-free and a 7-day free trial to test it out, plus access to our members-only Discord server where you could be talking to some of these other Locked On podcast hosts that we have on the show. Again, on Wednesday's episode, we're going to go through the forwards side of the potential additions to the Calgary Flames in this upcoming draft. And we invite you to stop what you're doing right now and click the subscribe button on YouTube, as we are ever close to 1,000 subscribers on that platform, as well as if you listen to us on your favorite podcast app, click the follow button so you get the episodes right at the top of your feed. For those of you on video, stick around. We'll send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Network YouTube channel. For those on audio, please make your second listen NHL Game Night with Locked On NHL. My name is Ryan G. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again soon for more Locked On Flames.